Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see all of you joining us for this call this evening. For those maybe who are new or joining us for the first few times, let me introduce myself. My name is Betty Olo, a long-time Neolife distributor, very enthusiastic about our products and what we can do to help the people who come to us for assistance. So the aim of this training, especially the product session, is to position ourselves so that we are better able to do that. So from wherever you are joining us, I'd like to invite you to take the next 1 hour with us, relax, listen, and of course, as always, if you have questions, we have a Q&A every other week. At least we have a Q&A which you can send your questions and we can discuss them, or we can send you answers if maybe you need to hear back urgently. So as I think I mentioned last Thursday, we will be continuing with our series on metabolic health. And we have had a lot of preliminary sessions to lead up to our topic for today, which is still part of metabolic health. But today we are dealing specifically with insulin resistance, which is what we have been building up to. And the reason why insulin resistance as a topic is so important and why I thought we would build up to it with the previous two sessions is because this really falls into how we want to introduce our clients and our families to the products by getting in before the problem gets out of hand. So in other words, when you're talking about pre-insulin resistance, we are even coming before pre-diabetes. That is, to start intervening when we start noticing certain aspects of our metabolism is not working well. And the first place to see that is in insulin resistance. So I will have mentioned this previously, but let me just repeat the definition there, that insulin resistance is a metabolic condition in which cells and biochemical pathways do not respond correctly to insulin. And you will remember that I said insulin is one of two hormones that are produced by a little organ called the pancreas, and which with the second hormone, which is glucagon, are in charge of our energy supply. That is, they make sure that the energy being supplied by our food from our digestive system is taken to all the different parts of our tissues to supply us with energy for growth, for work, for thinking, and so on. Glucagon, on the other hand, the second hormone, is the one in charge of making sure that when we are not eating, that is what we call the fasted state. That is the period when maybe you ate in the morning and you have digested the food and have been using the food, and now it's some hours later, maybe it's in the afternoon, and you still need energy, of course. And the reason why we are able to keep on going on is that glucagon ensures that our organs, tissues, and so on are supplied with energy by the way it signals to the liver, the way it signals to our other pathways. So then, going on with that, when you have insulin resistance, that is when your cells and some of the metabolic pathways are not responding correctly to insulin, what we find happens is that the glucose level in the blood rises because the correct response to insulin is that the cells open up, like the cells of your muscles, the cells of or the organs open up in order to let in glucose for energy, because glucose is our fuel for producing energy. So when there is insulin resistance, it means that insulin comes to the cell ready to supply, to signal that there is glucose ready to supply the cell, but the cell does not open up for that supply of glucose, which means the glucose remains in the blood. So as this problem continues, it means that you'll be having high blood glucose, but at the same time, you'll be having high insulin flowing around in your blood, but being ignored because the cells are not responding the way they should. And this is a thing that starts and develops and eventually is going to lead to serious consequences. So for that reason, what are the early signs that might warn us that all is not well with our insulin response system. I will mention 5 of them, but they are definitely not the only ones. But the first one is high blood pressure. Maybe some of us older people will have noticed that high blood pressure did not used to be such a common problem as it is now. But I think most of us will now say that probably in every family there is someone who, by the time they reach their 40s, are already struggling with high blood pressure. Maybe they have been struggling for a while, have been under medication, and they rely on the medication they receive to keep their blood pressure normal. But keep in mind that when you have a problem like high blood pressure, it's not because you needed medicine. Remember, medicine is an intervention from outside. The high blood pressure was not caused by something outside of you, it is caused by your own systems, which means that even though you're taking medicine and controlling your blood pressure that way, the problem that led up to the blood pressure is still going on and is still getting exacerbated. And this is why many times you may need to change the medication that you use, or you may need to increase the dose to get the results that you could initially get with a smaller dose. So high blood pressure or hypertension is one of the early warnings that all may not be well with our metabolic system. The second one is skin tags and darkening of skin creases. So if you think about places where we have skin creases, this can be like around the neck, the base of the neck where the skin gathers up, or it can be around the arms like the armpits and so on. So if you notice that certain things like that look a bit like warts, but they are not actually warts, they look like little pimples that grow out of the skin. And they don't hurt, they are not painful as such, and they're not from an insect bite. It's just little bubbles of skin that grow out, and these are called skin tags. These are another warning that the metabolism is not going on well and you're moving towards pre-diabetes. Then if you are dark skinned, it may not be very obvious, but if you are lighter skinned, you may notice that the places where the skin creases, like around the neck, around the wrists, around the armpit, you may start noticing that the skin gets shiny and darker than the rest of your skin. So that is another early warning. The third one is if you have a family member who has type 2 diabetes. That will tell you, if let us say it's your mom or your dad, grandmom, auntie, someone in your family, close family circle, that should also tell you that you need to keep a close eye on how your metabolic health is going. The fourth early warning is erectile dysfunction, especially in younger or middle-aged men. They're supposed to still be having normal, healthy reproductive reactions. But if there starts to be episodes of erectile dysfunction, that is another warning. And it is especially so if the person already had high blood pressure, because unfortunately, some of the medication for high blood pressure can have a side effect of erectile dysfunction. So that's another warning. And the last one I want to mention is migraines. If you have episodes of migraines, there can be other causes, but one of the causes is metabolic problems that are still in the early stages. That is, even if you go for your blood checks, it will seem still to be normal because the problem is in its early stages. But the migraine should be a warning to you that something problematic is going on. And so you immediately start adjusting your lifestyle choices, your dietary choices, so as to get ahead of the issue. So moving from those early signs that could warn us that things are not okay, and remember with these metabolic problems, the earlier we get into it, the more likely we are to reverse it and normalize things. If we wait until we are ill and we need medication, then of course it's not as easy to reverse the issue as in the case where you start earlier. So now, moving on to the issue of insulin resistance itself. This term has become very common, and there is a lot of contradictory information that you might get online. So the first thing I wanted to say is that insulin resistance does not manifest itself in the same way in every person who has it. it will manifest itself in different ways, in different organs, and in different persons. So for that reason, you may see the information telling you that insulin resistance is causing all the diseases that you could possibly think of. And this could be true in a way, but the thing is that it is it's the same thing, but it is manifesting itself differently in different people. So you may start scoffing and saying, this thing, everybody is saying that it is causing this, it's causing that, it's causing the other. And it seems like people are just going on and on about it. But I just wanted to clarify that the reason it may appear that way is because of the different ways in which it manifests itself. And that is going to be the main part of the rest of my talk this evening, because I wanted to point out some of the ways, a few of the ways in which insulin resistance will manifest itself in different tissues, and maybe in different people as well. So let us start with the blood, because insulin is a hormone, and like all hormones, it is transported in the blood circulatory system. So the first thing we may notice in the blood is that we may have a chronic abnormally high blood glucose, and for that reason, there'll be abnormally high insulin, because remember, insulin is produced in response to the presence of glucose from our digestive system. So as the body is struggling to produce insulin, in order that insulin is going to distribute the glucose to the different tissues so that the blood glucose can reduce, because remember, it's like having, let us say, water. If you have water in a pipe, in an irrigation pipe, the water is going to be under high pressure, but it's going to be dissipated as it is sprinkled in the garden. But if for one reason or another there's a blockage, then the water is going to collect in the pipe. So think about insulin as something, a chemical that's supposed to be transported in your blood circulatory system, where it actually feeds glucose to your cells. But because the cells are resisting the insulin, it means that the insulin, your pancreas is going to think that there isn't enough insulin, and so that is why the cells are not getting the message. But the problem is not that there isn't enough insulin. The problem is that the cells, which are supposed to be absorbing the glucose, are actually not doing so. So one of the things you will notice is that the blood insulin is high, and the blood glucose levels are high. So this excess glucose in the blood, once your body realizes that this glucose is a lot and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, it will obviously think that this is extra glucose, that you've already supplied your cells with glucose and now you have extra. And what does the body do with that extra glucose? It sends it to be converted into fat. And fat, remember, is a storage material. So it's converted into fat, and the fat is then deposited in fatty cells. But unfortunately, when this is a chronic situation, then the glucose is going to be converted into fat, and the fat is going to be deposited around your abdominal organs. The abdomen has got a good number of important organs. For example, you'll have your kidneys, which are in the lower part of your abdomen. You'll have the liver, you'll have the heart. These ones are in the middle of or just below your chest. You will have other things like the spleen, and all these are going to now be surrounded by a thick coat of fat, because this is the nearest place, and the fat is going to be deposited here. And this is why you may see that as in some people, the insulin resistance is going to cause them to start having an enlarged waistline or an enlarged abdomen, but the rest of their body is quite lean. And of course, that means that although you do not have, let's say, big thighs or big arms or big buttocks, you have fat being deposited around those crucial organs in the abdomen. And this is what is referred to as visceral fat. Unfortunately, if you are depositing a lot of fat around your waist and you see your waist beginning to thicken, that is another warning sign that your organs are now going to be in danger, because they are being pressed on by this fat which is being continuously deposited there. And this is, of course, related to the high blood glucose And that in turn is related to the insulin resistance, where the cells are refusing to take in the glucose that is coming from your digestive system. So when the fat cells are filled up, because let us say this is going on and on and on, and we are not taking the measures required, the fat cells are also, of course, going to fill up, because cells cannot grow and grow and grow forever. After a while, they are full. And these fat cells are now going to start trying to find ways to get rid of that fat because they are full. And what they'll do is convert the fat back into what we call free fatty acids, and they will return those free fatty acids into the blood circulatory system. So the blood was getting rid of the excess glucose by trying to store it in the fat cells, but once the fat cells are full, the fat cells are now going to reconvert the fat into free fatty acids and return it to the blood, with the idea that the blood is going to carry that free fatty acids away and go and use it somewhere else. So if the storeroom is full, then if it's this type of a living storeroom, then there are signals that say, okay, the cell says, okay, I can't carry any more fat than this. I have to get rid of some of this. And in fact, further down the line, we'll also mention that the fat cells themselves begin to be insulin resistant because they are full. But staying with the blood, what is going to happen here is now, because there is too much glucose, there will also be at the same time in the blood too much free fatty acids, because the fatty acids being deposited into the blood, because the fat cells are full, are going to also be flowing around in the blood. And this is where you may hear your medical practitioner saying that you have got fatty blood. This is because the fat cells, and especially for people who tend to, races where people tend to be more slender, like let's say many of the people from Asian origin tend to be thinner. They don't have a lot of fat cells. African people tend to carry a lot of fat around the hips and buttocks and the arms. But once those fat tissue areas are full, then of course the only place left is the abdomen, and that is why you can see the abdomen growing and growing and growing. Because if we are still doing the same things that we are doing when the problem began, of course the body is going to try to store all this food, because our bodies are always worried about famine. You see, there in previous times, food was not always accessible. In the times we live in now, for many people, of course, there are many people who still do not have as much food as they even need. But those are not the people who develop problems like diabetes, prediabetes, and insulin resistance. Those are the people who actually need to get food that can make them at least live a healthy life. But for the majority of the people whom I'm talking about in this case, there are people who the shortage is not food. The type of food may not maybe be of the best, but they have plenty of that type of food. So what can we as distributor do with someone who has already noticed, maybe as a result of taking some tests, or maybe because of familial issues that they've already noticed? What can we do? This is where we are now really recommending that botanical balance should be one of the common supplements that we recommend, because botanical balance will be a first step, together with 3NN, of helping to normalize the reaction of our cells to insulin, that is for the cells to react correctly to insulin. And the second thing is that we are going to have healthy cells and healthy mitochondria. So healthy mitochondria is going to be able to as the body takes in, as the cell takes in glucose, then the mitochondria are going to convert that glucose into energy for the cell to use. So between the two of them, botanical balance and 3NN, they are going to help with that initial problem of insulin resistance, where our cells are not reacting as they should to insulin. And as our blood glucose drops, then insulin will also drop, and we'll see things starting to normalize. But that cannot happen in isolation. Remember that our supplements supplement the good choices that we make. So in addition to that, there should be those lifestyle changes. So for example, when you have such issues, every time you select a carbohydrate to eat, it should be a fiber-rich carbohydrate, because the high fiber in your carbohydrates is going to slow down the pace at which glucose enters your circulatory system, and that will give your system time to dissipate the glucose correctly, rather than to have a great outpouring of glucose and resulting in a great outpouring of insulin and having an ongoing problem all the time. So then let us go to the liver. So the liver is the other important organ, not only in detox. We often talk about the liver when we're talking about detox, but the liver is also very important in the storage and supply of energy, as well as the conversion of extra glucose into fat for storage. So when there is insulin resistance, there are certain things that you will notice in your liver. The first will be that the liver will start getting mixed messages from the hormones, the two hormones that we are talking about, which will lead to it starting to make fats, even though the fat is not needed, because there is already enough glucose supplied in the blood. But because the cells are not responding correctly, the liver will be signaled that you need to produce more glucose, more to convert fat into glucose, because the cells are starving. So these cells are not starving. It's just that they're not responding correctly. But the liver will understand that what it needs to do is to supply more glucose. And at the same time, it will receive other messages that says, there is too much glucose in the blood, you need to convert it in fat. So you can see there will be contradictory signals given by the two hormones that we talked about, glucagon and insulin. And this will make the liver not react correctly. And over time, the liver will be overtaxed with this what is it called? These contradictory messages. And that is where we start having issues in the liver. And you also find that there's going to be inflammation in the liver. And unlike other let's say other parts of our bodies, the liver does not have muscle. So we cannot exercise our liver. We cannot say that I'm going to do more exercise so that my liver is stronger or healthier and so on. And in addition to that, the liver has got no nerves. So even when your liver is in trouble, you will not feel any pain because it has got no nerves. Remember, the liver deals with toxins, and for that reason, it has got no nerves, and it will not respond by giving you pain, which is usually a warning that things are not okay. So by the time we realize that the liver is in trouble, the trouble would have advanced a lot. That is why we keep in mind the other peripheral things that we can do to take care of our liver. For example, always being aware that we keep our toxin load low. This is why we are always saying a healthy diet means you eat mainly minimally processed foods, because a lot of processed foods have got substances that are not food. They are used to preserve the food, they are used to color the food, they are used to give the food a certain texture and so on. All of these are going to need to be detoxed by the liver. In addition to that, when you are taking chronic medication, part of the medication is doing what it's supposed to do, but it also needs to be detoxed, because you don't just absorb the medicine as if it's food. There'll be a part of it that the liver has to detox. So when we don't resolve issues like high blood pressure and so on, and let's say we are taking also hormonal contraceptives, we are taking when we have a headache, we are taking these painkillers for headaches. If we have got hyperacidity, that is things like heartburn, we take other medications. All these are taxing your liver. So for that reason, it is very important to follow healthy dietary choices, because that is how you can help your liver to not be overrun by toxins. In addition to that, there are supplements that we can recommend that will help the liver in its function. And that will be flavonoid complex, it will be botanical balance, and we also can add their beta gut, which we know well is very important for detoxing. Okay, then we go on to fat cells. We mentioned them before, but just to quickly mention that when we have insulin resistance, as it progresses, the fat cells are also going to be resistant to the messages from insulin. And what they do is, as I said before, they start breaking the fat and turning it into what is called free fatty acids. And these free fatty acids enter the blood circulation system, causing fatty blood. This fatty blood has the effect of worsening the insulin resistance in tissues and especially in fatty tissues. It also increases plaque in your blood vessels and causes cardiovascular issues. Remember, plaque is going to contribute to the high blood pressure because it's going to deposit inside the blood vessels and make them narrow so that the pressure becomes abnormally high. Of course, also, this fatty blood is going to contribute to the inflammation in the liver and also in the pancreas. And that is why we are having situations. I get a fair number of questions about things like pancreatitis, which is an inflamed pancreas. We get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because the fat is now, the liver is now running out of places to store fat, and it stores the fat within itself because the other places are, the fat tissues are saying, no, we are full, we don't want anymore. So that is how we end up with the fat cells, which are usually supposed to be a very useful thing. The fat cells are supposed to be our storage places where we keep the food, the fuel we don't need immediately, and convert it back into glucose when we are in a fasted state. That is when we are not eating. And this is why we say that one of the things you can do in your lifestyle is to follow time-restricted eating. For small children, of course, we don't restrict their food. We give them the food that they need because they're still growing and their energy expenditure is high. But for young adults and so on, we discourage what does it call, snacking, because snacking means that we are almost eating all the time. Our system is never without food. And what happens is that our systems usually prioritize the energy from the digestive system. That is the newly produced energy, which means that as long as we are eating and snacking and eating and snacking, our fat stores are going to only be increasing. They'll not decrease because we never give our system a chance to go into the storeroom. It's like a rich person who has got a lot of cash at home, but also money in the bank. As long as they've got plenty of cash at home, they're not going to go and take the money out of the bank account. They are going to use the money which is in their wallet and maybe in their safe in the house. If we want to start burning fat, we need to have those breaks when we are not dealing with newly digested food, so that it will force our system to go to the stored fat, that is to the storeroom, and release that fat with the help of the liver and use it for energy instead. So if you are struggling, such as myself, with putting on more weight than is healthy, what you need to do is have that's TRE, time restricted eating, where you don't, first of all, you can start by eliminating snacks. And definitely, if you are snacking, you should opt for snacks which are not going to contribute to the insulin problem. So it should be, if it's a carbohydrate, it should be high in fiber. But better snacks should be things like proteins, maybe with a little bit of fat, because they do not disturb the insulin system as much as carbohydrate. And definitely, you should abandon choices like junk food, fast food, sweets, cakes, and all this should just be removed from the choices of your snack and even the choices of your meal. Let us try to go back to our traditional foods, because some of these food choices that have been introduced recently into our lifestyle have proved to be too much for our metabolisms. Anyway, I wanted to also mention the kidneys, because this is another area where we are really noticing a lot of trouble to do with insulin resistance. Our kidney is like the liver, is a very hard working pair of organs because we have two. And the kidneys filter our entire blood supply 60 times in a 24-hour cycle. That is a lot of serious work. And that is because the kidney cannot eliminate every toxin we might take in with our food, with the air, and so on. So what the body has developed to do is to filter everything out in the kidney and then take back just what we need. So you can see that this is a very important organ that is always working very hard. And what happens with insulin resistance is that it interferes with the kidney's work of filtering. So what the kidney will do is to reabsorb glucose, even though there is already too much glucose in the blood circulatory system. The kidney thinks that glucose is something that we like to keep. Remember, our body likes to keep any extra energy and store it for the day when there's going to be no food. Unfortunately, that is how we are made. So the body will not say that, oh, now I know there's plenty of food, so we can waste. Most of the time, the body does not behave like that. What the kidney is supposed to do is keep the things which are useful, get out the things which are harmful or which we don't need. Like, let's say if we have drank a lot of water, we pee a lot because we don't need all that water. So the kidney knows that, okay, well, I can see that the water is enough. Let's get rid of the extra. But glucose, the kidney does not respond in the same way with glucose. What the kidney does is reabsorb the glucose back because it knows that glucose is very important because it is our fuel. So it keeps it. Unfortunately, remember, the problem is that we already have too much glucose in our system. And this chronic high glucose in the blood starts to damage the blood vessels in the kidney and also the filtering units of the kidney, which are called glomerular filtration systems. So if our glucose is chronically high, and remember, all these problems only come about if they are chronic. So don't get me wrong that I'm saying that the moment your blood glucose is high, you're in trouble. No, this is if it's an ongoing thing. And that is why we are talking about this earlier stage, so that we start taking care before things get to the point where now things are breaking down or our system is not responding the way it should respond under normal circumstances. So when we damage the blood vessels, there's very tiny blood vessels in the kidney and in the kidney's filtration system, what is going to happen is that the kidney is going to start being less effective in its function. And that is why, I think I've also mentioned this before, we are noticing dialysis units being added to our hospital. Some hospitals are opening up whose entire function is just to dialyze people who have kidney problems. And a big contributor to those kidney problems, chronic kidney disease, is actually this insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, and diabetes. So this, you may have your other parts of your organs might be working okay, but your point of weakness is the kidney. So as other people maybe are suffering from high blood pressure, the first thing you might notice is that your kidney starts to be less and less efficient. Another person might notice a different aspect in their insulin resistance. So I just wanted to mention before I go on some of the supplements that we can recommend for people who are having kidney issues. Usually they will tell you that you are in early stage chronic kidney disease, or you are in middle stage, or you are in late stage, by which time you are looking at dialysis. By the time you're in stage 3 and 4, you are looking at needing to have dialysis. But before we reach that, if you have had people in your family that have had chronic kidney disease, then it's already a warning. If you maybe are noticing that your regularity of needing to rush to the toilet is increasing, those are all warnings that your kidney is not okay. And you need to start supplementing with things like Beta-Guard. We need to start supplementing with multimineral alfalfa, chelated zinc, and flavonoid complex. So that can be a support that we start early. because once the kidney disease has reached the stage where you need dialysis, it means that the kidney is really struggling, and we even limit the amount of supplements we can recommend because the kidney cannot deal with them. So at that time, we'll only recommend a few things, maybe Betagard, some extra vitamin B, because Betagard does contain some vitamin B. But unfortunately, when you have kidney problems, one of the things that appear is that you always are deficient in the amount of vitamin B. And remember, vitamin B is a family of vitamins that are used in very many of our systems and functions. Then I also wanted to mention issues to do with the brain. The insulin resistance is going to appear also in our brains. And this insulin resistance is going to manifest in things such as brain fog. Maybe you have heard about this, that someone just finds that their mind is blanking out and not really very sharp and able to think clearly. And that comes from the fact that the brain is not taking up as much glucose as it should because of these problems of insulin resistance. In addition to that, another way in which insulin resistance can affect the brain is by interfering with satiety signals. So satiety is the feeling of fullness. When you eat food and you've had enough, your brain tells you that, okay, that's enough food, now you can stop. But if we have insulin resistance, that is when you are full, but also you feel like your belly might be feeling full, but you feel that you need to eat some more. And you also start getting cravings for funny types of food. Maybe you start craving sugary foods because your brain is thinking, we need to take in things with sugar because it will give us more glucose. And that ends up in overeating of the problem types of food. Another thing is that more and more research is showing that certain types of Alzheimer's are linked to this insulin resistance problem. Again, remember, this is early, but unfortunately with Alzheimer's, by the time you're showing symptoms, the problem is far advanced. So just to keep that in mind, what we can do is, of course, make the lifestyle changes that will support health. And in addition to that, we have supplements like Mind Enhancement Formula. We also have omega-3 salmon oil, and as always, 3NN. Then, because I see I'm running out of time, I want to mention reproductive organs and how insulin resistance is going to affect them. So I have mentioned before when I'm answering questions to do with polycystic ovarian syndrome, that it is a manifestation of insulin resistance in the ovaries. And when there is high insulin in your blood, what will happen is that it will cause the ovaries to start producing testosterone in abnormal amounts for a woman. Remember, women, like men, also have testosterone, but men have a higher amount than women because testosterone is an androgen, that is a male style hormone that supports the masculine reproductive system. Women are supposed to have it in small amounts because if the amount starts to increase, the woman is going to start noticing that they start growing hair, male style hair, like on their chin and so on. So that is usually something to warn that maybe the hormonal balance is not good. And that is why one of the things we recommend for PCOS is herbal feminine complex to help to balance out the hormones. But remember, if the insulin and the blood glucose are out of order, then you are going to continue producing testosterone, and this is also going to reduce fertility in the woman with PCOS. PCOS is one of the main contributors of reduced fertility in women of reproductive age. Also because the high insulin is going to interfere with ovulation, and that means that the woman may not be as fertile as would normally be. Irregular menses will be another thing. So all this is going to be the result of having this high insulin, and I will repeat that the high insulin is because of having too much glucose, which is not being absorbed by the tissues of the body due to insulin resistance. So for polycystic ovarian syndrome and others of those different cysts growths, we recommend botanical balance, first of all, and then recommend herbal feminine complex, multimineral alfalfa, and you can also add their omega-3 salmon oil or Provitality. Then lastly, I wanted to mention on the side of men, erectile dysfunction can be the result of chronically high insulin and high glucose. And this will also, it can be, I remember I said that if you are on medication for high blood pressure, remember high blood pressure is also linked in some cases to insulin resistance. So the erectile dysfunction can be a side effect of the insulin resistance, which would be preventing the veins in the penis from opening up to allow blood to engorge. And it will also, it can also lead to damage of those small blood vessels because of things like fatty blood and so on. So one of the effects of insulin resistance is that it's the initial stage of pre-diabetes and later on to type 2 diabetes. And for that reason, we take very seriously things like high blood pressure. Rather than just plan to take your blood pressure medications indefinitely, start using supplements and lifestyle choices to resolve high blood pressure and the health issues linked to it. For high blood pressure, we recommend lipotropic adjunct, and we recommend omega-3 salmon oil. Increase exercise and movement in your lifestyle. Avoid, for the sake of erectile dysfunction, we recommend avoiding and eliminating substances like cannabis and alcohol because they contribute to this issue. And for erectile dysfunction, we are going to recommend herbal masculine complex, which supports the male hormones and reproductive system. We also recommend chelated zinc and, of course, botanical balance. So just also to say that botanical balance, threonine, magnesium, and fiber tablets are very important for pre-diabetes as well as diabetes. But remember that if you're on diabetes medication, some of the medication, if let's say you are taking insulin for your diabetes, the high insulin in your blood, because you are adding insulin now, because it seems that the one you have does not seem to be enough, means that you are going to end up with the same problem as if you are producing too much insulin. Because remember, we said there is a problem with too much insulin, which is caused by too much glucose. Now, the place we should all attack is why is there too much glucose in the system? And that goes back to our diet. So we have to look at glucose always comes from carbohydrates. So look at the carbohydrates you are eating. If you're eating carbohydrates that have been processed, let us say it's a grain that has been milled into flour, that is already processing. You can do that when things are still normal. But once you start having issues, you need to make sure that you are taking the grain as whole grain, as in you can see the grain yourself. If it's something like, let us say, cassava, eat the cassava plant rather than using cassava flour. If it is something like rice, maybe brown rice, because by the time the rice has been, the hull of the rice has been removed, it means that it is processed and it's going to speed up the rate at which it is digested and added to your blood circulatory system. So my brothers and sisters, our friends, it is very, very important that we look at our diet, because the majority of the illnesses that we are talking about when we are talking about our supplements are not from infections. They are actually from the food that we are putting into our system. It would be a very good thing if we looked at the food we are eating as a signal. Does it signal good health or does it signal ill health? Let us try to go back to the foods that we were eating before, because these illnesses were unknown when we were eating our cultural, minimally processed foods. And the processed food can be a part of our life, but a very small part, not the majority of our diet, because clearly we are not able to handle it. As you can imagine, this is a very big topic, and I've been trying to break it up into smaller and smaller parts, but it's not so easy. But I hope I've indicated to you that even though you may not be having issues to do with PCOS, you could be having issues to do with Alzheimer's. Maybe you're not having to do issues with Alzheimer's. You could be having issues to do with your liver. Maybe it's not the liver, it could be the kidney, or it could be erectile dysfunction, or it could be plaque in your blood vessels. And it's very likely that if you follow a healthy diet and use the supplements as to supplement those healthy habits, you will find that you are able to rectify this problematic situation in whatever manner it presents itself. I would say that one of the best things that Neolife has done for us is to add botanical balance and magnesium complex to our supplements, because they are going to play a very important role in resolving this issue of insulin resistance. I know that we cannot touch on everything, but remember the sessions are usually to start you on the journey of discovery. So if you find that maybe I did not say all the things you had hoped I would say, you can still do some further reading to acquaint yourself with the way in which this issue might be manifesting itself. So I want to hand you over to Pascal now, because I've gone on for a while, and the next session is coming through. But thank you very much, and I hope that you have found the session beneficial, and it will start you into looking at your lifestyle and at the information that is available. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thanks, Betty. I think that summarizes what the mission of Neolife is, and that is we want to make the world a healthier and a happier place. So we want to thank Betty very much. That is really a wonderful session. So the session I want to discuss with you today is how to build structure in the business. What does that mean? Building structure means that you want to just one moment, let me set up my screen. Okay. Building structure simply means you want to make your business profitable and stable, because the reason why most of us join the business is to build a business that will give us income even for a long time after now. And that can only be done if we build our structure correctly. So if you give me a moment, I want to share the screen with you. All right. I want to share this small document with you. What is building structure? Building structure means that we want to make maximum profit from our compensation plan. That's one. Number two, that we want to qualify as directors or whatever it is every month, because we brought in people that want to become directors. So what is the first thing about building structure? The first thing about building structure is to do the basics. What are the 4 basics? Name list. Contact your prospects. Show them the plan. Follow up. Keep doing this until you do, let's say you do your 3 in 30. 3 in 30, for those who are new, means that you sponsor 3 people in 30 days. That means you sponsor 3 people every month. That is a key to our business. But once you sponsor 3 people in 30 days, what do you do with the people you've sponsored? Remember, what is the goal of sponsoring somebody in the business? The goal of sponsoring somebody in the business is to build directors, to help the people in your group become directors. That is really why you sponsor people in the business. So, step number 3, what do? Identify business builders. That is, identify people who actually want to build a business. Remember, people join the business for different reasons. Some join the business just to use the products. Some join the business because they're looking for another way to generate income. Some join the business because they want to really turn it into a full-time career. So, identify business builders. How do you identify business builders? The following things. Number 1, they attend all the training. Number 2, they ask you questions about the business. Number 3, they're constantly seeking information from you so that you can teach them or show them how to build a business. Once you've identified these business builders, help them to go to step number one, that is doing the basics. Let me say this is, in this example, it's important for you to draw your structure. Take a piece of paper, A2 or A3 paper, then draw yourself at the top of the paper, and then when you sponsor somebody, draw them on your piece of paper in this way. How do you build depth in the business? Two things about building structure. One is building width. It simply means you sponsor people directly under you. That is what building width is. So if you sponsor 3, we say you are 3 wide. If you sponsor 6, you're 6 wide. But what do you do with these people you sponsored? Let me say you sponsored a person A. What do? A person A, you sit down with them, ask them to write a name list. The goal is to reach 200. Initially, it should be 30, 40 names. And then you help them to contact their prospects and show the plan to their prospects until they sponsor somebody else. You haven't sponsored a person until they have sponsored somebody. Let me say A sponsors B. B joins the business. So you tell A, okay, we have helped B join the business. Let me work with B to show them what I've just shown you, so that it releases A also to sponsor his own distributors. The goal is to keep doing this until you're 6 or 7 levels deep in each of these legs. By the time you're 6 or 7 levels deep, that leg should have 10, 15, 20, or 30 people. And that's how you build directors in your business. And the more people you build as directors, the quicker your business grows and the more income you generate, because you are paid according to the volume of products that people in your team do. That is really where our income comes from. Our income doesn't come from recruiting or recruiting people. Our income comes from sponsoring people, teach them to use products, teach them to retail or share the products, and teach them also to build their own organizations. That's how you build structure in our business. It's simple, but it may appear as if it's complicated. Think about our business like a tree. The deeper the roots, the more stable the tree is. The wider the roots, the more stable also and profitable the tree is, and it produces good fruit. That is simply what building structure is. And it takes time. That is why our business really, really requires patience. If you think about our business like having children, when you give birth to children, you're very excited. I know a lot of distributors, when you sponsor somebody, you're very excited about the business. But you have to be patient to teach them what you know. That's how you become successful. Patience is a very big part of our business. And let me just share the screen with you. I would like to show you a few things also about building structure. So we say that building structure, first thing is build width. That means go to 4 to 6 wide. Use a 3 in 30 because it's the company's dependable program. Then share the business with people, the basics, name list, invite, show the plan, follow up. And then build depth. Each leg, the goal is to go 14 levels, 12 to 14 levels deep. Initially, you're going to go 6 deep. And as you do this, you're going to identify people who want to build the business. It needs to look like this. An important thing is focus on what duplicates. That means make the business simple. Don't complicate this business. It's a very simple business. It's just talking to people. When you talk to them, some will say yes, some will say no, some will just want to use the products. When they do that, show them what you have done to sponsor them in the business. The other thing I want to share with you is, I know this is something that most people are afraid of. I was very afraid of hearing no in the business when we started. But this is something you have to go through. When we joined the business, I spoke to quite a lot of people. Some of them said no, some of them said they are interested in the product, some of them joined the business. You will have people who tell you all sorts of things. This thing doesn't work, or I'm not interested in this. This is a pyramid scheme. All those things are going to happen to you. If they don't happen to you, you are not actually talking to you're not talking to enough people. If you talk to enough people, you will find people who discourage you. You will find people who tell you this thing doesn't work. You will find people who say there's a pyramid scheme. Don't worry, that is part of the business. People will join your business if they, one, know you, two, they like you, three, they trust you. Those three things are very important in joining the business. So when you speak to a prospects, there are only two alternatives. They'll say yes or no. A lot of people want to sit on the fence. This is not an easy thing to deal with. But if somebody says yes or no, it's easy to make a decision on what to do. All right? A very important attitude I want to suggest to you in the business. No and yes are not opposites of the business. They're not opposites of each other on the path to success. Most people think that this is the way it is. You have no to the left and you have yes to the right of the prospect. But this is not actually the truth about our business. The important thing about our business is to realize that the path to success is first, you go through a no. In fact, you may go through several no's. Then you can get a yes, and that's what leads to success. So when you get a no, thank God for the no, because that person has disqualified themselves for joining your business. Remember, you're looking for people who are looking for the business. Okay? So when you hear no, it depends on the meaning you attach to what the person says. Most people take it very personally because maybe when you're growing up, you had the no so many times that when you hear the no, you shrink or you get into yourself. But no could mean many things. It could mean I'm not ready, or it could mean I don't understand, or it could mean I am afraid of starting this business. It could mean so many different things. But remember this, no is a path to a yes in our business. When people say no, it means either they're not ready or it's not, the business is not for them. What I have found very effective, when people tell me no and they try to justify their no, or they try to convince me that the business doesn't work, all the people I've said this to, I tell them, look, maybe this business is not for you. That always arrests people's attention. Okay? And the attitude it conveys is that you're not actually begging them to join the business. Betty and I are really grateful that you were introduced to Neolife. So our sponsor actually did us a great favor to sponsor us in the business to reach where we have reached today. So we are very thankful for being sponsored in the business. So no maybe that they have not understood, no maybe it's the wrong time for them, or they haven't seen what the business is. So remember this, no is a path to yes, eventually to success. So the more no's you get, trust me, the more no's you get, the more successful you're going to become. I think the challenge is you get 2 or 3 no's, then you stop. Big mistake. Don't stop when you've got 3 or 4 no's. Keep going. That's why you need a very long name list. You see, if you have a name list of 10 and 9 people said no, you think the business doesn't work. If you have 100 names and 9 people said no, you still have 91 people to speak to. So write a long list. Then the next thing is dealing with challenges in our business. Everybody who is attending this session today, you're going to go through challenges, without doubt. So learn to embrace the challenges. Learn to accept that challenges are part of the business that will make you stronger. For example, discouragement from people around you. Fear of rejection. That is very, very common in our business. The negative environment, which you see, the negative environment, this you have control over. If you have people around you who are negative, either avoid them or don't find people who are positive, encourage you to go after your dreams. Another thing that is going to be a challenge for you is inconsistent action. This is a part-time business, not a sometime business. Okay? Don't work very hard for 1 week, then the rest of the month you don't do anything. Remember, our business builds on momentum. Do a little every day, even if it's talking to one person a day or two people a day. Do that on a consistent and regular basis until it becomes a habit. That's how your business will grow. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are some of, I haven't mentioned all the challenges that you're going to go through, but these are just some of them. Have them in mind. If it happens to you, it is not something extraordinary. It is not something you're doing bad. It is actually part of our business. It is part of the growth of our business. Discouragement from relatives, friends, if sometimes even in your own home, people discourage you from building the business. Fear of rejection. Remember, fear is you create a mental image of things you don't want. That is really what fear is. A negative environment, then inconsistent action. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that some of the things that we have shared with you is going to help you build your business and so that you can get to the next level. So thank you very much and good night and God bless.